welcome back to the Football Terrace and the Done Deal Show. I'm joined this morning by Dean Jones. Lots to delve into. Tonali to Newcastle, personal terms agreed, looks like a done deal. Spurs have bought a new goalkeeper, or on the edge of completing that. We're looking at Mason Mount to Manchester United. An imminent bid reported for Caicedo to Chelsea. We'll be getting Dean's views and insight on that. And of course, City now entering the Declan Rice race. Arsenal still favourites, we understand it, but Dean will be delving into all of that and a little bit more. Make sure you send your questions in. Member chats, super chats, always prioritised as ever. Dean, but how are you, first of all? Good morning, and how are you?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you, mate. Yeah, it's been a good start to the transfer window, hasn't it? I think it's been enjoyable for everyone. Maybe not you, actually. Man United fans probably having not too much a good time of it, and Arsenal fans probably a little frustrated with the way things have gone generally. But at least that Kai Havertz deal is getting over the line there. That's really important that they could make a splash early on. Such big intentions in this window for Arsenal. And while Rice was supposed to be the first name unveiled, it looks like Havertz might just pip him to the line on that one. But yeah, it's been good, mate.
It certainly has. And I think it also blows out another one of those weird fan sort of tabloid created myths that you sign your number one priority first. You know, it's that idea that football transfers are that linear is crazy.
Yeah, I mean, it was the intention, to be fair. Like they did intend to try and get to make Rice the big name of the summer, but that's become a little more complicated, hasn't it?
Absolutely. And we'll get into that later in the show. So stay with us, ladies and gentlemen. The first deal I wanted to ask you about was Mason Mount and United's pursuit of him, because we saw the second bid rejected. But there are lots of talks today that although Chelsea have rejected the second bid, that they're actually softening on their initial sort of stance of 75 to 80 million, and a deal nearer the 60 million pound mark could get done. What's your understanding of how close that deal is to completing or being agreed for Man United and Mason Mount?
Yeah, I mean, United have always expected that Chelsea would have to come down from their valuation of Mason Mount. There's no bidding war here at the moment. I mean, when we first started the Mason Mount stories a few months back, Arsenal were in the picture, Liverpool were in the picture, Newcastle were in the picture, and you were thinking, well, Chelsea have got themselves in a pretty good position here, and they might get themselves a little bit of a tug of war between a couple of clubs and fighting over who can actually get Mason Mount. But as it is, Man United are the only team in the picture right now. So why would United really go to where Chelsea wanted them to get? It was 50 million, including add-ons, which is what I was expecting. So I was pleased that turned out to be the bid that went in. I personally think that that's fair, given the contract situation. From Man United's point of view, they're like, well, you didn't give him the contract that you feel he's worth. Like this is the strange thing about the situation. Like Chelsea didn't value him highly enough to actually offer him a contract that would keep him in the first place. So how can they continue to say he's worth a certain amount of money that they were never willing to back up themselves? Mason Mount in a pretty tricky situation if this drags on much longer. And so are Chelsea. I think Man United's stance now is whether they even need to rush. They're a bit torn. Ten Hag himself wants a signing confirmed as soon as possible. Now, I don't think personally that Mason Mount is a massive game changer in terms of how Man United's season is looking for next year. No. But it is important that they bulk up this squad and they start making signings. And Ten Hag obviously needs that. So to have Mason Mount through the door from his personal point of view is important. From a Man United business point of view, they're thinking, well, we don't want to rush this unnecessarily because we're putting Chelsea in a situation here where they're going to have to sell the player. We're only 2 weeks away from players returning to pre-season training. And as somebody put it to me the other day, what did Chelsea do if they get the players coming back in at Cobham and Mason Mount's still there? It suddenly puts them in an awkward situation. And then like a week and a half after that, when they all first meet up, they're going off on their pre-season tour. Mason Mount definitely shouldn't be part of that. I mean, they've made pretty clear that there's no contract going to be signed here. So it all starts to become a bit more complicated. Yeah. So the intention has always been that Mason Mount would have his future sorted out during this like holiday period. And that holiday period is starting to run down a little bit. So I do think another offer will go in, but I don't think that Man United are going to get to a set £60 million offer for Mason Mount. Might get there with add-ons, but that would be related to how successful Man United are, how successful he is individually, and there's no guarantees to ever actually getting to that £60 million mark. And I think that £50 million really is where Man United see this deal hopefully settling out.
Excuse me. Just I wanted to speak. Listen, I get that. I think, as you say, maybe they're softening Chelsea because they realize they're not going to get anywhere near that 75 million mark. Maybe now United go back and offer something with, as you say, some add-ons there. United win some trophies, or there's, two seasons on the bounce qualification for the Champions League with Mount playing a certain amount of games. You get an extra 5 million, something along those lines to be able to get this over the line. But it is an interesting one. He's told Chelsea again he's not going to sign. They don't want to lose him on a free. They've said that categorically, Chelsea, they don't want to lose him on a free. Well, I've read reports saying that. So, yeah, it is a real interesting one. Man United fans are also, let's walk away, let's put our money elsewhere. And I get that on a personal preference. But I tweeted something last night, and it goes against things I've said on streams, but my mind's changed. I actually think Mason Mount's going to be a success at Man United. Speaking to Chelsea fans off record is what's key sometimes. Like, what do you actually think, mate? The cameras aren't on. No one's going to judge you in the comment section. What do you think? And straight away, what you see, what you get, what you understand is that Chelsea Football Club, Chelsea fans rate this guy high. A lot of Chelsea fans rate this guy highly, and they are desperate for him, absolutely desperate for him to stay on. We are getting a lot of comments here. Oh, wow. David Ornstein has confirmed that Man City would submit an official bid for Declan Rice today. Massive news. We will, of course, get onto that news later in the show, so stay with us. But to the Arsenal fans who called me out yesterday just for a passing tweet saying Arsenal better hurry up because Gundogan's gone now, and that means they're coming for Declan Rice. Learn to read rival stories from credible sources, and you won't be as disappointed as maybe you're feeling, or stupid looking as some of you are looking right now. And we'll certainly, we obviously we were going to talk about that later on in the show. But
well, yeah, I mean, that's actually we touched on this the last time I was on this show. We did a bit on Declan Rice, and I think I said on that one, take Man City seriously. Like, he would go there if it came to it. Like, his priority was always Arsenal. But I'd been told a few days before that Man City that the interest was real, and that Declan Rice, would be interested if that was the avenue that he had to go and explore. He's been told he can leave West Ham. He's not going to go back to West Ham. I keep reading West Ham fans being quite optimistic about the Arsenal situation. They're like, oh, we might get another year out of him. That's not going to happen. But what you are going to get here is a situation where Man City, you talked about at the top, losing Gundogan, obviously. So they've replaced him, obviously, in terms of numbers with Kovacic. Kovacic was already coming into Man City. It didn't really matter if Gundogan left or not. Kovacic was going to join Man City. So Gundogan actually leaving Man City means a spot has opened up now in Man City's midfield. And Declan Rice suddenly does become a feasible option for them to go and explore. Man City having the signings of Gvardiol, Kovacic and Declan Rice for next summer is a pretty scary prospect, but it's also a pretty real prospect as the way that it's opening up right now. This could have been avoided by Arsenal. Arsenal are in the same situation they found themselves in the Premier League. I think we mentioned this last week too. On the Premier League, they had one hand on the trophy. It looked like they might be able to get it, and they let it slip away. Declan Rice, they've had one hand on him for weeks leading into the transfer window, and now he's starting to slip away too. This would be a disaster for Arsenal if Declan Rice actually didn't end up signing for them. He was happy to commit himself to them, but you've now got the treble winners and Pep Guardiola knocking on the door. And the way it was put to me when I spoke to my contact a couple of weeks ago, he said, look, yes, Declan Rice likes Arsenal. Yes, ideally, he'd prefer to stay in London. If he has assurances that Pep Guardiola is staying in charge of that team for the next couple of years, that can change his mind. And I think that that's something now to consider, because Pep Guardiola has given assurances recently that he will be seeing out his contract at the Etihad. And if you're Declan Rice, that's a very, very hard thing to ignore.
It absolutely is. And, I was talking on videos. Listen, I understand low balling. I understand not going in with £100 million bid on day one, because you might end up being pushed to pay 120, 130. And that maybe stops other deals that you need in the team. But equally, in videos I spoke about And I use the big blue shark analogy because Big Steve that comes on our show, a Man United content creator, he said this on a number of occasions this year. It got to a point where he was having Haaland after every win in that title race sending pictures of sharks, if that makes sense. Like, and I said to him, you've got to get out of the water. You've just got to now pay it. And that's what Arsenal have got to do right this second. Rice is on holiday. It doesn't matter. You phone his dad, his agent, and you turn around and say, right, we're putting 100 million plus some whatever, 100 million plus 5 add-ons in right now for Declan Rice. And we still got your agreement because we're going to go get it accepted now from West Ham. But West Ham have now got what they've wanted. There is a bidding war. And with a bidding war, all bets are off. All bets are off because at the end of the day, if City outbid Arsenal and Arsenal don't match it, the personal terms become irrelevant. This is what happened with Chelsea. Chelsea made a better financial offer to Shakhtar Donetsk. And it didn't matter that he preferred Arsenal over Chelsea. He wanted his move to the Premier League. And suddenly Shakhtar said, well, we're not going to accept Arsenal's offer. It's not as good as Chelsea's. You put yourself in a predicament, which is why I tweet about deals bit. I always get stick for saying, how can a deal be on it towards Arsenal and a deal be on at City? Well, because deals are active for multiple clubs. And if the selling club doesn't accept Arsenal's bid, they can't buy the player. And Declan Rice is leaving this summer, as we all know already. So the Arsenal, pull your finger out right now.
It appeals West Ham more to sell him to Manchester City. Obviously, not only is there more of a rivalry with Arsenal traditionally, but like you say, they've had 2 offers going now that weren't where they wanted them to be in terms of structure. I think they're getting a little bit agitated by that. But Man City also have a player that West Ham really, really want in Calvin Phillips. And while Calvin Phillips doesn't want to leave Man City, there doesn't seem to be a role opening up for him very obviously in that City squad. And if that's what breaks this deal, I can see it coming onto the table potentially. It's not often that, or really ever, that players are forced out of Man City. But if that's what becomes the deal breaker, then it's going to have to be discussed. I think actually West Ham and Calvin Phillips are a pretty good match. I understand why he wouldn't want to give up on playing for Man City. Absolutely understand that. But if you're now looking at a team that's still got Rodri in it, that's got Kovacic in it, and is going to have Declan Rice in it, what opportunities really is Calvin Phillips going to have going forward? So I think that is another factor that comes into this equation that we have to weigh up, and one that West Ham, it will absolutely appeal to. I know that we're talking about 100 million here all the time in terms of the figure they want Arsenal to get to. But Man City, as I say, have a player that they're interested in. So maybe there's some manoeuvring that could be done around that as well, if Man City are willing to consider the idea of pushing him into it in some way.
Absolutely. And as much as you don't want to leave a treble-winning team, a title-winning team, game time is important to players because he won't be going to the Euros next summer if he's sitting on that bench at City all year. I just can't imagine a world where that takes place. So that can happen. And even Man United. Now, I don't think, and I've said this, and I don't believe we're going to get him over those 2 teams. I think with the financial issues we've got because of the takeover and the fact it's Arsenal and City that are both ahead of us, I don't see it. But even with us, and the West Ham sources spoke yesterday, money plus McTominay and Maguire is something that may be more appealing to West Ham because it's players they actually want, players they would like to sign, and it stops them from having to go into the market for 2, 3, 4 weeks and be. Well, if they get £100 million cash, everybody's going to up their prices for players they want. It can be a better alternative. So Arsenal have got to think creatively now. They've got to get this deal done because they're at risk of being hijacked and losing their number 1 target. And with fans not being happy about Kai Havertz, for me, it changes the whole complexity of Arsenal summer, if you get where I'm coming from.
Yeah, I see someone in the comments just said, you're talking like he's a Man City player already. I really definitely don't mean to come across that because Arsenal definitely still have one more opportunity here and they need to move fast on it and they need to get it right and they can still get this deal done. Let's not forget Declan Rice does want to join Arsenal and has been in his head pretty much an Arsenal player coming into this summer. So like we have to remember that is the situation. A lot of that team would be built around him in the coming years and yeah, there's all those sorts of factors. So absolutely, I'm not discarding Arsenal at all. It is also interesting that like the first Declan Rice bid was made by Arsenal. And within like a couple of hours, Man City were linked to that time. This time it happened again. Man United were suddenly thrown into it within hours of the second bid being made for Declan Rice. Of course, West Ham want an auction here. Like, there's no doubt that they're trying to create something somehow. But there is also basis to it. Like, there is foundations to the fact that Man City, like Declan Rice, they've never been really sure whether that was a path they could and would go down in this transfer window. Same with Man United. Man United's disadvantage is that they don't have enough cash available to make all of the transactions that they need this summer. They needed the takeover to go through at the start of the summer, and it's still dragging on at this rate. I'm not convinced by the end of the transfer window the takeover is going to be done. So we'll get to that later on. But yeah, for Declan Rice, it's going to come down to who makes the best offer. But Arsenal do have the opportunity still to get that offer in. Probably today is now going to be more important than ever before to try and make news and make some headway on it.
Absolutely. We've got more to come on Arsenal later in the show, so stay with us, Arsenal fans. Any questions you've got, any super chats you want to send in, feel free to get that done. Costa here actually says, and this is why we want Edu out. That is from Costa. And I understand that. And thank you to James Turner for becoming an official member of the Football Terrace as well. Obviously, we were on the Man United subject.
Yeah, sorry about that. We went a bit off pace.
No, we had to. It was breaking news. And listen, Gooners that are tuning in, Chelsea fans are coming in. Big updates still to come on your football clubs with other players you're in for from Dean. So stay with us. Don't go anywhere. Lots to talk about as well. And maybe there's more breaking news on Declan Rice during this live stream. So stay with the Football Terrace and the Done Deal Show. Striker-wise, I just want to ask you if there's been any updates or progression on the Hojlund situation. I know the noise around Kane's picked up after the international break that he wants to move. Anything new in the striker area for Man United?
I've not heard anything on Kane for sure. I know that's trying to be brought back to life at the moment. And there was a story about United selling Kane. He would have to hand in a transfer request. At the moment, there doesn't seem to be any intention from Kane to do that. Hojlund, I think, is a really interesting one. I mean, there was a story recently about indications that Atalanta were going to almost price him out of the market at 80 odd million pounds. I mean, that is not the intentions that United had around that player when they first entered any form of negotiation around him. We were literally looking at half of that amount. Now, speaking to people in the last few days, I get the feeling that 60 million pound is probably a reasonable amount to expect. I totally understand why they would be holding out for more for Hojlund. Everybody knows United are desperate for a forward. Everybody knows that if you're going to sell to the Premier League, you add on a premium and all the rest of it. But I think Hojlund won't go for 80 odd million pounds. I think 60 could do the job. And I think talking of, like I was a second ago about the takeover and the funds available right now, I don't think there's much more than £100 million available without that takeover from what I've been hearing. So realistically, what's the best you can hope for? If it was Mount and Hojlund that United could get through, what does it change? And what does it mean for how this team feels in pre-season? Because if the takeover does happen and the big signings come now, it looks like it's going to be right at the back end of this window. Yeah. And I think that's what's going to be important is like, what does this change about United's vision going into the new season? You're a United fan, so you'll have your own feelings on how you'd feel about that. But I mean, if you were thinking about it in May, you were like, right, Harry Kane, we'll go after him. Who's our big midfielder going to be? Is it Lavia? And at one point, you're thinking, is it Frankie de Jong? You're like, well, Mason Mount isn't really what we had in mind. Not sure exactly where he even fits into this team. But okay, we'll take him. Is it settling for just a small upgrade on the squad, or is it making splashes like Arsenal have been trying to make? I mean, that's what I like about Arsenal's business. Whether or not they pull it off, at least they are trying, like seriously trying, to make additions that are going to impact that first team straight away next season.
Yes. No, I understand that completely. I think Mount, I've got a feeling he'll do well, but we need someone who maintains possession in the middle. Hojlund, look, he could be one of those signings that comes in and you go, wow, he's much better than I thought. Or he scores maybe an extra 7, 8, 9 goals than predicted. But he looks at this stage, a 15 goal, maybe 20 in all competitions. Like, he almost feels like a Chicharito level signing. Does that make sense? In terms of Never going to be good enough to by himself to win you help win you a Premier League or a Champions League, but will improve your squad. It's this takeover that's holding Manchester United back, and hopefully there has been some noise in the last few days that it feels like a conclusion is coming. For the first time, we've seen mainstream media come out and say that the Glazer family are all in agreement. They want to sell, but for the right price. So hopefully they get that. Because I think once they announce it, the club can kick on, and you'll probably find, I know it might take 12 weeks for the new owners to come in, but you will get almost a go and spend money. We'll fix everything when we arrive almost. So it'll be an interesting one to see what Manchester United do. I wanted to ask you about Newcastle, mate. Newcastle here. Now, this is a real big one for me. Sandro, Tonali, and Newcastle have reached an agreement on personal terms, and the deal is likely to complete for around 70 million once the structure of the deal is agreed upon. This is a phenomenal piece of business for Newcastle, in my opinion. It also blows the myth they only have 75 million to spend. Also, we knew that was BS. We knew that was nonsense. But yeah, what's your understanding of this deal? And Newcastle means serious business.
Yeah, I mean, they've obviously been looking for a partner that could help Bruno Guimaraes flourish. They've looked at umpteen people in that position. I think they're briefing at the moment that this was the top target. I'm not entirely sure about that, but it was definitely a target. They had quite a few, so it's hard to know for sure. Tonali is a really interesting player. Look, I'll be honest, I don't know what you'll get from him first season. At AC Milan, it took him a long time to find his feet.
Yeah.
But, he was younger at that point. He's been there a few seasons now. He's a good player. He really is a good player. The Chelsea had interest in him at one point. In terms of profile, it surprises me that Chelsea wouldn't be in the conversation at this amount, given the state of their midfield right now. I'm told that they were slightly unconvinced about whether that was worth the investment and what the full potential of the player was. So I think that that's interesting. This is a lot of money. 70 million euros is a lot of money. As you say, we were told, well, some journalists were briefed that Newcastle's whole budget for the summer was £75 million. I'm expecting Newcastle to spend closer to £200 million this summer. And this definitely fits in with what I'm hearing, because they want 5 signings. Also, don't think it really helps them when they set out their stance that they don't feel that James Maddison's worth £55 million if you're going to spending this straight away on Sandro Tonali. So they might be backing themselves into a corner over that one in terms of negotiating with Leicester. But it's a really interesting signing. Tonali actually plays tonight for Italy under 21s. Wow. Which is interesting. To still be in the under 21 setup right now is interesting. Actually, tonight, Italy play against France, and he's going to be up against, in that France midfield, they got Manu Kone and Kefren Turam. So you're going to see Sandro Tonali up against those two, which, as an early indicator for Newcastle fans, a very good moment to get a grasp of exactly what this guy's capable of. I think he's captain, actually.
See, he's one of those players, Tonali, who when he went to AC Milan, there was this expectation that, I know they won the league, but there was an expectation that he was kind of part of this group of young Italian players that was going to bring AC Milan back to the pinnacle of European football. I'm not saying he won't be a success. I'm just stating that I've never been moved. I've never been emotionally moved as a football fan when watching him play. I've seen him have good moments in games. I've seen him play well. Do I think he's, you look at the price, 70 odd million. That's the similar amount of money you're looking at for Caicedos of this world. Obviously, significantly less than maybe Declan Rice is going to go for. I think he's maybe a level below those players. However, who knows? The way, if you look at the growth of Joe Linton under Eddie Howe, if you look at Almiron under Eddie Howe as an example, Longstaff under Eddie Howe, they just look like exponentially better football players playing for him. So I think it's a good piece of business for them. I'm not sure. I've seen a lot of Man United fans crying, this is who we should be buying. Again, if someone said to me now, you could sign Tonali or you could sign Mason Mount as your first signing, I would probably pick Mason Mount. But that doesn't mean I don't think Tonali isn't a good player. And I think it's good business for Newcastle. I think it means they're serious when it comes to this. I've seen a lot of notion, they'll just fall out the top 4 this year. Liverpool and Chelsea will be back. Don't bet on it.
Yeah.
Don't bet on it.
Look, I like Tonali. I don't think he's a world beater. I think that the problem you've got here, and not necessarily this is a problem, but a week ago, they're being reported to be signing Barella, right? Barella is pretty much my favourite centre midfielder in the Serie A, right? Tonali's not as good as Barella, but Tonali is better than Sean Longstaff. So you're upgrading your midfield. And this is what Eddie Howe does. And the other thing is, Eddie Howe is a very good manager, and he'll be very personable. Now, Pioli at AC Milan has got the best out of Tonali over time. It has definitely taken a long bedding in period. Tonali's admitted that himself. There's been some games I've seen Tonali at, and he's been brilliant. There's been certainly enough games too where I've seen him and felt that he wasn't brilliant. I think that the Premier League won't necessarily suit him straight away. I think it will take a little bit of adaptation period, but also like Newcastle, as I say, have been looking for somebody that reflects what Bruno can do in that midfield and allows him to flourish in his full role as an 8. So I think that that's probably coming into this a lot, but it's a real indicator of Newcastle being serious in this window. Obviously, he has the James Maddison situation to get stuck into. The profile of the centre-back is going to be interesting to see who they actually go for. I'm hearing, some of the centre-backs that they're linked with and we're briefed about are like 10, 15 million pound. And then I'm suddenly told about another centre-back that's like 50 million pounds. So I don't know where they're going to land on that one. As well as that, you're going to get them looking at another central midfielder and a fullback as well. So we've got 4 more signings to come at Newcastle this summer. And yeah, they're certainly trying to level up, but it's going to be tough because they punched above their weight last season. They've made the Champions League, and now those expectations are there. And you've got a lot of teams that are going to be expecting to catch Newcastle.
100%. They're going to be chased down. I don't know how they sign a centre-back, a midfielder, a fullback, and Maddison for £5 million, though, because they only had 75 million to spend this year. It's be very, if they do
free
that,
transfers in there.
Yeah, a lot of them. Yeah, Maddison's an interesting one because I know that you spoke last week about Tottenham maybe being the front runners for him now. Nothing's really progressed in the last 7 days. Like, what's the latest with James Maddison and his next move?
Yeah, I mean, I know a lot was when I first started saying about that. I was talking about the connections between Tottenham and him. Basically, his representatives are base, and Postecoglou is also represented by base, and that's how Tottenham's sudden search for a new manager was led by leaning on intermediaries, trying to find something that could happen. They got Postecoglou through. Maddison has, the same reps are using Maddison, as I understand it, for that. And that's why Tottenham, one of the reasons anyway, Tottenham have an edge in that deal. You're right, not a lot has progressed on it. But you mentioned earlier on Tottenham signing a goalkeeper, Vicario, at around 17 to 20 million euros. What is interesting about that is David Raya was obviously not going to be pursued at the amount that was being spoken about of 40 million euros. And now they've gone in to get a goalkeeper at half that amount. Now, one of the reasons they didn't go 40 million for Raya is because it opens up more money in the outfield positions. And that does free up more cash for them to go after players like James Maddison in the coming weeks. So I think that's one of the reasons they'll be doing that. I don't know much about this goalkeeper. I know that Inter Milan had an eye on him in case they lost Onana. But beyond that, he's been pretty left field. There's barely been any speculation about this. But maybe that's just good scouting. Maybe Tottenham had him on their radar for a while. But yeah, I imagine that this is due to the fact that Tottenham do have a limited transfer budget for this summer, and they're not going to pay over the odds.
No, they're certainly not. And I think 40 million for David Raya is fair. When you consider, I really think he's a 40 million pound goalkeeper. You think what Alisson went for, who's considered the best in the world 5 years ago, he went for 75 odd million, maybe a little bit more, maybe a little less, something around that. The importance of goalies has grown in the last 5 years. The age is on his side. He's got great statistics that back up the eye test. It has to be a limited budget. I mean, I don't know who this goalkeeper is. I'm not going to pass any judgment on Vicario at all, because if you don't know how good a player is or bad they are, you shouldn't really assess them. But I'm going back to what Daniel Levy said maybe 3 weeks ago when Postecoglou was announced. It was almost very much the way he kind of spoke about the deal, or the manager is, we spent a lot of money on I'm paraphrasing here, but we spent a lot of money on previous managers, it didn't work. We really hope Postecoglou can get the best out of our academy. He had there was a comment along those lines, and that just tells you we ain't going big, which is also like crazy as to why sell Harry Kane then if you want to buy some more players, because you're going to lose him for free next year. Financially they could be in a bit of a mess, and if they're not back in, if this doesn't work and they don't get back into Europe, where's the money coming from? If you get where I'm coming from, it's an interesting one for Tottenham, and I know there's a lot of Spurs fans online doing the whole. I love what we're doing. We're buying cheap. We're buying obscure players, unknown players. That means we're going to be brilliant. I think there's a lot of copium. There's a lot of copium being injected right now to those guys. But we will see what is happening there. In terms of staying in London, I wanted to ask you about Chelsea. We saw, it felt like about 35, 40 exits yesterday. It was crazy, one after the other. A lot of them off the Saudi. There still could be more going off the Saudi. But Simon Phillips and a few other journalists close to Chelsea have said that Chelsea are to make an imminent move for Moises Caicedo. Maybe they're even more infused to do that now with City and Arsenal so focused on Declan Rice. Maybe now is the right time to sweep in for him, because, again, if Rice goes to City, you would expect Arsenal's mind to change and look towards Caicedo. What's your understanding of the latest there in terms of Caicedo being on his way to Chelsea?
Yeah, I mean, it's just that valuation, isn't it? I mean, we're looking at 100 million now. Brighton have suddenly upped things to, and I mean that's a bit of a game changer for me. I mean, Caicedo has played one full season of Premier League football, and you're talking about him being 100 million. Like that's pretty absurd. I mean, I'm pretty sure Brighton bought him for about 4 million or something very low a couple of years ago. Now, obviously, his performance levels have been extremely high, and he could be whatever he wants to be. Like, there's no doubt about that. The thing that I find baffling at the moment about Chelsea's transfer strategy is it's all geared towards the future. Nothing seems built towards next season, and it's all about how they're going to look in a few years' time and how much these players are going to be worth in a few years' time. And this is a team that won the Champions League 2 years ago, right? You go back now and you look at that Chelsea team that beat Man City. By the start of next season, there might only be three of those players left, that were actually figured in that Champions League final. They're just having this huge cull of the squad. It's absolute madness. And you think back then, there was a match early on in the following season, and Arsenal played against Chelsea. You know, Arsenal would have like Holding and Mari in their team, and they had like Lokonga in midfield, and Chelsea had like all these like world-renowned stars.
Yeah.
And they're all just offloading them all, and they're buying 20-year-olds with a vision to the future. And there's no balance in this at all. And I know a few people that like represent players at Chelsea or like work closely to Chelsea, and there is a bit of apprehension about what's going on right now.
Really?
So when you're looking like Moises Caicedo, I think actually is going to be a good signing if they could get that through. And I still think there's quite a long way to go before you get to that point. But also the other players that they're looking at, Lavia, he's 19. You know, you look at all the players that seem to be on their radar at 19. Rice, as an established 24-year-old in the Premier League, that's different, and I think that gives you a bit of a different feel going into next season.
Yeah.
But I'm just surprised that Chelsea have gone this far the other way so quickly under Burley to just make such a different change. Under Abramovich, everything was about the here and now. Who are the players we buy that go and win us the title next season? Who gets to the Champions League next season? Who do we need to get? And they'll go through. And now it's Arsenal trying to do that. It's a very strange about turn. So, yeah, I do believe that there's something in the Caicedo stuff going back to that. I don't doubt those reports that you're reading at the moment. I just think that Brighton will drag this along as much as they can. I mean, Caicedo's pretty much on an open promise that he can go. Just depends what he makes, really, of them keep hiking up his price a bit, because it seemed like it should have been about 80 million.
Yeah. As you say, the price is just skyrocketed, really, over the course of time. But I suppose the higher the valuation of Declan Rice, the more they'll look at it and say, well, we'd all do it. If you've got a house in your street that you feel is identical to a house 4 doors down, and you're both up for sale, and you find out you're on for 600 grand, and you find out theirs has just gone for 750,000, you're going to up yours and say, well, actually, I think mine's worth every bit as much. And that's how the housing market works. It's how most sales markets work. As everybody else increase their prices, you typically go along with it. So yeah, I do feel there's so many of these deals that are kind of interlinked, and I felt like I said the other day, I think Mason Mount's price will drop in terms of the Chelsea demand once Havertz and Kovacic's deals go through, because it sets a benchmark for the players that want to leave, their age and contract length, and the pedigree and way you view them. It sets a kind of precedent for their value. You know, there are a lot of Chelsea fans who say Kovacic is better than Mount. Well, he's just gone for 25 million plus 5. You can't demand 80 million for a player that you will say is better. I get he's younger, so there's an extra 4 or 5 years difference, so there is an increase in price. But those benchmarks need to be focused on by fans. But I get what you're saying with Chelsea. I do understand where you're coming from in terms of who are going to be the established elder statesmen to move them forward. I think a midfield of Caicedo and Enzo is fantastic. I think Nkunku is a very good player. And maybe this comes later on in the window, I do feel profile-wise, they need to go out and get their Casemiro. Does that make sense? I know they've got Silva at the back, but I almost feel like they need to go out and say, like, how do we replace Aspie in terms of his experience and understanding, but with legs? They almost need to bring in a player or two who are a little bit older. You know how Liverpool did a few years back when they brought in James Milner? Not a superstar, but somebody who's been there, done it, worn the t-shirt. They maybe need a few more of them in their team. But yeah, very, very interesting strategy.
I think Kovacic is a big miss. I think Kovacic is underestimated in terms of like the effect that will have on losing him. I think Kovacic they should have tried to keep, especially the fact that they've lost Kante in the same summer. I think that's huge. You're still looking obviously at losing Mount too. I know he hasn't figured that much at the back end of the season, but like Mount's been an instrumental part of that Chelsea midfield structure in the last few years. Even Conor Gallagher and Ruben Loftus-Cheek, who have been like in and out of the team all season, like there's potential for those guys to go too. So you're talking about 5 players that have been part of that team all the time going. And then even like Kai Havertz is going, Ziyech's going, Edouard Mendy's going, Koulibaly's going. Like that is a hell of an exodus that you've got to recover from. Whether or not the last season went well or not, you are literally pressing reset all across the field. And there are very few teams that are able to recover from a moment like that. Think of when like Tottenham sold Gareth Bale and went and signed 5 players to replace him. Didn't work.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, Chelsea's recruitment, I think, is a bit smarter than what they've done. And I understand like the profiling of these players. But it's going to be difficult for Pochettino to get stuck into this from the word go and actually get things together, because Chelsea haven't got an identity right now. He's literally got to create something from nothing, because this is a completely different side now from the one that last won the Champions League. And I don't think it really needed to be this bigger breakdown of the side. But now that they've gone there, there's no turning back, and you've got to go fully on with it. They still need that centre forward, and you look at it signing Nicholas Jackson again. You're looking at a player that's all about potential. He had a decent season. He had a decent season in La Liga, but I don't think he's pulling up any trees. Not like they've had major competition from all of Europe's elite clubs to try and sign him. They've maybe had like RB Leipzig, I think, and Aston Villa, basically the sort of clubs you're competing with for him. So again, a good player, not a player that thinking, oh, that's it. That's the guy that goes and gets us 25 goals next season. That guy is like Aussie men. And why there's just no, at the moment, there's no urgency, it seems, to go and sign that player that really, really makes the difference. Maybe it will come. I'm not saying it won't, but it's clear that as well that Chelsea just wanted to get rid of all these fringe players as quickly as they could. That's a clearly part of it before they actually get to the Caicedos and etc.
I get that. What I would say, to be fair and balanced about it as well, is a lot of people are criticizing Chelsea and saying you've got to sell all these players before you start looking to buy. So I think they're kind of doing what a lot of people expected them to do. It's just there's no links to those more experienced players, as you say, at the moment. And maybe that comes later on down the line, and they pick up a few gems that really help glue these young players together. And we'll see. This here just says, I take it back. They've just made a bid. Oh, did you say earlier that City hadn't made a bid? No, some people said, Terry, how comes you've changed the title of the video? Because news breaks while you're live. We were already talking about a potential hijack. And then it literally during the show, these things happen. Got some super chats here. These are weird ones. They're saying these are calling each other in the comments section exposed. Oh, he's saying that he's an ex-Chelsea fan. Okay, I'll leave you lot to that in the comments section. This is
There's a lot of Chelsea Arsenal crossover these days, isn't there? You might as well support one and the other.
You get a little bit of that. This we'll come back to the Arsenal stuff in a moment. We'll come back to the Arsenal stuff in a little bit on Rice. We're going to cover that again because there's been some updates on that in a few moments. In terms of breakdowns of costs, we are going to talk a little bit of Timber, Urian Timber. What's that looking like to Arsenal? Updates on Lavia coming as well. Please make sure you hit the like button. Please make sure you subscribe to the Football Terrace as well and share this across your as many platforms as possible as well. In terms of the update on City, I'm just going to try and type this in because I want to make sure there's people are putting it into the comment section here, but I'll put it up on the screen so you can see. According to Damasio, Man City wants to offer 75 million in 2 installments plus 15 million in add-ons, which is thought to be a realistic achievement. So that takes it to 90 million. But just looks
That's
like
the same as what Arsenal just offered.
Yeah, I suppose maybe they feel
the
structure, maybe.
Yeah, literally only the structure is different there. And maybe that swings it, but yeah, I mean they want the payments within 2 years of this full amount, so that kind of works, but it's still not 100 million, and that's supposed to be the minimum amount. Like I was saying, maybe it means that even if they get encouragement that Calvin Phillips or another comes in the opposite direction at some point this summer, maybe that's a caveat of it, but that
Yeah,
amount is going to be 90 million. And what Arsenal will do with their next bid is get up towards 100 million. So Arsenal's next bid will be more than that. It's just going to be what is the structuring of it, and then you have to figure out what West Ham would prefer. Like Arsenal have to change the way that they're doing it. They can't be doing it over 5 years or whatever. So they need to go away and look at that. And it's expected like pretty soon that Arsenal are going to do this. I'm just checking my phone to make sure no one's texting me to let me know that is happening right now. But no. That's annoying. I thought that was going to be the same guy.
waiting for that Dean bomb. Do you know what's interesting? Again, this legitimately gives our if this news is true from Damasio, and we know Damasio is very respectable. Very respectable, very well well-renowned guy in the industry. So you take it with, and you don't have to say it's 100% true, but there's obviously an air of truth to it, or credibility to it is what I'm looking for. But this gives Arsenal that opening. It gives Arsenal that opportunity. It's that window. It's that window to say, right, well, let's bid the 100 million. Let's get it done. It's not as though City have come straight out and gone, there's 100 million, there's 105 million, there's 80 million plus Calvin Phillips. They've offered the same as you in a better package. Go and better their offer. Get it agreed and get it over the line. Get that medical, wherever Declan Rice is, whatever yacht he's on, send a team of doctors to him now. Get the medical done. It's you've got to do it. You've got to do it.
Yeah, I mean, obviously Arsenal are further down the line here, so they're still at an advantage. The only disadvantage they've got is they've been knocked back twice, and they don't want to get burned for a third time. So that's going to be key. But Arsenal's strategy for this summer, I've been really impressed by, to be honest. And I was looking at it today thinking, look, if they get Timber, Rice, Havertz, and then go and get 1 or 2 on top of that, like what a way to improve on the push that you had last summer. And they really do mean business. But if one of those elements falls away, Rice it might be, then you're suddenly looking for backups and you're thinking, okay, where are they turning now? Is it going to be Lavia? Is it going to be Caicedo? Do they go and get Onana from Everton? Like, where are they going to turn here? Like, what is there going to be there? Do they go to Barella? Like, what happens next? And can it live up to all the excitement and expectation that has been around Declan Rice? This obviously wouldn't be the first time that like a big name player has failed to sign for his top target club and they recover from it and you move on. But Arsenal have been burned by this pretty recently. Like even with Mudryk, like I know he hasn't turned out yet to be a superstar at Chelsea, but like everything was just built around like this guy's coming. There was almost no doubt that Mudryk was going there, and it didn't happen. They were supposed to win the Premier League, and it didn't happen. Now they're supposed to sign Declan Rice, and it's not going to happen. So I think the intent from Arsenal was great, but as a fan, I can Yeah, I can sympathise because there must be a lot of frustration around the fact that they're so close to all of these things and they never quite get there.
Never quite get over the line. There's some super
Yeah.
chats here. Ibby says, it's been a good morning. Then I check my phone and see City are about to bid for Rice. Knew it when Gundogan left. Now I'm worried, Terry. And I get that worry. This is Man City. This isn't Man United. It isn't Chelsea. It isn't Liverpool, who are all powerful, can all attract players. But it's City who are treble winners, who have Pep Guardiola as their manager, who have Haaland up front. He'll be playing next to Rodri and KDB. It's a game changer. It is a game changer. You know, there's a lot of men out there that are loyal to their wives. But you're suddenly out on a night out, and Michelle Keegan comes and sits next to you and starts saying, "Look, I've kicked out the Towie boy. I've been following you for years, Dean, on Twitter. I think you're amazing." Some people, I'm not Dean wouldn't. Dean's too loyal a man. But there are some people that would be like, hang on a minute. That's Shelley Keegan. And it happens. So yeah, I get the worry. I get the worry. You know what I mean? I'd certainly be worried if my other half was out and Brad Pitt came and sat next to her. Do you know what I mean? I'd be like, damn, that's Brad Pitt.
Yeah. You might have to fold on that one. You might have to fold.
You know what I mean? I'll hold you. I'll hold your bags. This here says, Terry, I think Arsenal are gonna use Havertz like a Haaland with better link-up play, and Arteta will improve his confidence in front of God like a Haaland.
I don't think so. I mean, I think what they like about Havertz is that his versatility across the front line. I think that they think he could be used anywhere across there. But they also like the fact that he can be an 8 or 10 driving out of that midfield, possibly even when Odegaard's not available. It gives them another option there. I think they might even use him as a support when they're looking to change the dynamics of a game and look to play him off of somebody. I think that the indications I've got is that Havertz is just really excited about the fact that Arteta can unlock his full potential in this league. He doesn't feel like he's been able to properly find his feet. I think he feels like he's not even given the full version of him yet. And as somebody put it to me the other day, like Arteta he's signing the Germany version of Kai Havertz here, the version he's seen in the Bundesliga and that he's seen in the national team. He's not interested in what's been going on at Chelsea because he knows that is not him. And I was saying to someone yesterday that this might end up being one of those transfers that Chelsea regret. I mean, there's been a couple of them through the years. Let's just say De Bruyne as an example. Like, they let him go, turned into one of the best players in the world. A lot of Chelsea fans don't seem that bothered at the moment about Havertz. A lot seem to think he's lazy. A lot seem to think he misses too many chances, doesn't score enough goals. But I'm like, you've misused him. You've misused him for most of the time he's been at the club. Yeah. That's why he hasn't been thriving. And if Arsenal do manage to use him properly, which I don't think will be quite like Erling Haaland, then they will get a lot out of him. I'm not saying he won't play through the middle at times, because of course he will. But Kai Havertz has just got a lot of little intricacies to his game.
Yeah, absolutely. Laka here, Laka the local man, says, I get the fans being upset, but where on earth is Rice worth 100 million? I'd say let's put a bid in for Caicedo while he waits for the Man City bid.
Yeah, but Caicedo's 100 million too. So is Caicedo worth 100 million? Like, Declan Rice has got more experience behind him. He's for England also like huge, and in like that as part of that, I think he would be part of both of those teams more quickly because he knows some of the players in the setups. So Declan Rice has got a few things about him that just edge it value wise. But Caicedo, as we say, he's younger, but his ceiling's every bit as high, and he can be whatever he wants to be. It's just, I think, that experience factor that people will be like, yeah, is he definitely worth 100 million? I think 80 million is more realistic.
Hark here says, I'm still quite confident on Rice. Reasons why is because I know for a fact the fans will want Edu's head on a spike if he fails. There is a little bit of that. There is a bit of that. I mean,
a lot of it's obviously on Twitter and stuff, which the clubs aren't particularly focusing on in moments like this. So I don't know that Edu will be too concerned about what the fan situation is right now, because he'll be so engrossed in the business that they've got to go and do here. It's interesting. Like, I whenever you hear from Arsenal fans, like how harsh they are on Edu, I guess as a neutral who just reports on it, you don't really scrutinize these things so closely when from distance that things seem to have gone pretty well. They got into the Premier League title race. They've gone and signed Kai Havertz. They were leading the chase for Declan Rice for a long time and probably still are. So it does seem a little harsh to me, but I get it.
This here says, Dean, sorry, it's not impressive unless they actually get their targets, but we have probably the worst negotiator, Edu, ever. He needs to go, is what LJ Brown kind of alludes to what you were just saying there, actually, to be fair.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I just feel like they've done some good. It's hard. I'm like, Arsenal have come so far so quickly that I think we kind of have false expectations of what they should really be doing now anyway. Like the signings of like Zinchenko and Gabby Jesus and how quickly that transformed them. The fact they managed to get Odegaard in when Odegaard could pretty much now be playing in any top team across Europe would like to have Odegaard right now. Arsenal got him through the door. They went out in the last transfer window, they had to react quickly, and they were getting like Jorginho and Trossard to try and help them get over the line after missing out on like Mudryk. I don't feel like Mudryk's been a big miss so far. Long term, he might be. So I understand it. I still think that Arsenal have been quite impressive to have come this far in the last 2 years, because absolutely no chance would I given them of even being in the title race at this point. Or, to be honest, of even be in this conversation, to be signing Declan Rice, to be signing Kai Havertz, to be potentially beating Man United to Yuri and Timber. I've been convinced for the last year, if Timber was coming to the Premier League, it's going to be Man United. They were first in the conversation. Erik ten Hag knows all about him. United need a centre back. If Arsenal were to beat United to him, that's a great feat. That's a great signing if they manage it.
And do you think I mean, it feels like they're going to personal terms. I've seen it from being reported from agreed to almost done. The clubs aren't far away on valuation. Urian Timber, do you expect him to be an Arsenal player?
I mean, this is the thing. I guess it comes back to the offer again. I mean, 30 million's not enough, is it? So they have got to back this one up again and go in properly at 50 million to get the player. 50 million seems pretty fair to me. You know what you're going to be getting here. He's a very, very good player. Fits what Arsenal were looking for, technically, but physically as well. And I think that Arteta will like the fact that he can help shape him a little bit too, and get a bit more from him as he progresses in his career. So I like this. 22 years old, Timber. This is a really, really strong signing if Arsenal manage to do it. If they could turn around things with Declan Rice and then they get Timber through the door, these Arsenal fans are going to be feeling ecstatic, if they can turn this around.
I agree with that. Dyke here says Havertz 19 goals. He does mean 90 in 91 appearances. Were a player. Yeah, I mean that's the Haaland take. He's not going to do a Haaland done. There's no chance of that. I hear you. Winter Surfer here, one of our Chelsea viewers, says sorry, misuse Havertz. This guy himself says he can play up front. He was wasteful and does not excel at anything. Plus, KDB played 4 times for Chelsea.
I don't think he enjoyed it. I don't think he enjoyed the system he was used in. If Tuchel would have stayed in charge, I think you'd have seen a different Kai Havertz for the duration of last season. I think that he went from, as soon as we got into the Graham Potter era, I don't think we were seeing Kai Havertz anywhere close to it. And then obviously Lampard comes in next. It's just been a system after system which didn't suit him. And it's the same for Mason Mount, by the way. Like Mason Mount, the old version of Mount would have been continuing, there was no way that Chelsea would be letting him go right now. It's only because he became the victim of that team whereby everybody thought, well, Mount's really off form. Actually, the setup that Chelsea were using just didn't suit him at all, but they continued to play him week after week, knowing that he wasn't thriving. And, I think he feels a bit hard done by in that sense from what I've heard from people. So it's a tough one. Look, I understand, Chelsea fans have seen a lot of Havertz. They've seen him miss a lot of chances. It's not like the chances weren't there for him. I get it, but I just know that there's a lot more to Kai Havertz than we've seen. And I think Arteta's a better manager for him than any of those ones that he's had before, apart from Tuchel.
There we go. This here says, I agree with you, Dean, about the versatility, but I believe he has a plan to start him up top, improve his confidence, and drop him into midfield during the game. I don't think he'll play on the wings.
What, ahead of Jesus? Like, I don't think that will happen. I don't think that that's the plan here. Like, not from what I understand anyway. Like, it's only obviously early conversation, and it's hard to understand yet because, like, since this all came about, like, there is no training, there is no press conferences, there's nothing. But so you're only going on talking to people who have discussions with other people inside their club. So it's all like kind of secondhand information at the moment about like what Arteta would do with him. But the main messages are like they like him because he can play in all three top positions, but also that he can play the two positions out of midfield as well. So I don't know that there is a set role for him. I'm not saying we won't see him through the middle. We of course will, but there are a lot of movements around with Jesus that I think that Havertz will expect to fill into those gaps that he leaves behind.
That makes sense to me. Ibi says, who got Saliba, Saka, Martinelli to sign new contracts? In my opinion, getting Saliba to sign was bigger than any transfer. Criticism, yes, but Edu out is silly, is what a man like Ibi says here.
A very sensible comment.
This here says, Chelsea fans, no hate on you guys. I just don't like plastic football fans. I expose plastic football fans no matter which club they are from. Thank you, Arsenal Fever. Appreciate the comment. Terry, Arsenal fans. Sorry, Arsenal are City's wingman. City will get Rice, is what 0 Degrees says. Look, it could happen. It could happen. 4 big chances in the Prem since he moved is what. Listen, like one of Mount and Havertz is going to have good seasons, in my opinion. This here comes from KJ. Put an update in. This here comes from a Turkish reporter who says that Man United are preparing an opening bid for Inter Milan's 26-year-old Nicolo Barella. I hope that's true. I hope that's true.
I bet you do, yeah. I mean, Barella's going to be at least 70 million. So I'm not sure how that balances out in terms of the takeover not happening yet. Try to go for Mason Mount at 50 plus million, having to sign a striker. David De Gea, suddenly uncertainty around his contract. Like, absolutely, there would have been no plans to go and sign a new goalkeeper. If David De Gea ends up leaving, then Man United suddenly have to spend at least 40 million on a goalkeeper if they were to go in for Raya. More than that if they end up going 60 million to an Onana. I just don't think Man United have this kind of money available to them right now. I think that it's going to be extremely difficult for them to get to those levels. If they were to get Barella in, that absolutely would be a game changer. Like I said at the start, signing Mount and Hojlund, it's not really enough to give a Man United fan huge excitement about a new season, given all the transfer windows that you've seen in the past, given you know what it takes to break into that challenge at the top of the table, to actually get in the contest to win the Premier League or try and win the Champions League. Mount and Hojlund probably aren't that. Barella, that is a step in the direction. That does start to open things up that are a bit different. And it also makes other players think you want to be a bit more of a part of it. So it's an exciting one, but I'll be interested to see if that can get off the ground.
110%. Then suddenly you go Barella and Mount added to the midfield with like Donny van der Beek and Fred leaving. You suddenly go, okay, well, there's a big improvement in quality, energy, being able to press, the shape, everything improves. So yeah, I absolutely agree. An update here I want to give on the Declan Rice situation while we're live. This comes from Fabrizio Romano. It says, yeah. It says here, Manchester City have also checked on the player side and understand that Declan Rice is open to any move. So the deal depends on the clubs. You said this last week and Arsenal fans crucified you for it. This only London thing is only partially. He preferred London to Munich, but
yeah. So Declan Rice lives with his family, and not just like his missus and their kid, like extended members of the family. So he's got like it's quite a different setup to what most people. He's got a very, very close family unit, so he doesn't want to move far because it means a lot to him. It keeps him grounded. And I think he values it so much for how successful he's been so far that like he doesn't get carried away. He loves his life, but moving to Manchester is like 2.5 hours. Like, it's not that big a deal. Like, he would do that. Like, he's a professional footballer. He knows he can't just like spend his whole life around the same part of the country. Arsenal obviously was an option that came along, and especially when the Arsenal thing started. Don't forget, they were top of the league when these conversations began and stuff. So there was every reason to believe he was, even at the time, he was going to be joining the Premier League winners. But throughout this, Man United were actually first to be linked with Rice before Man City were, probably around March time, and I checked in with somebody then, and they said, look, there's nothing really in this at the moment, the Man United thing, but he'd absolutely consider joining Man United. Like, he's got so much respect for Man United in terms of like the tradition, and their standing in the game would really excite him, no doubt about it. And then, like I say, like probably 2 weeks ago now, someone telling me about Man City's interest, telling me it was 100% real, and that Declan Rice would be interested in it if Pep Guardiola was definitely part of it, and that Man City were keen to, and the Arsenal thing wasn't looking likely to happen. So that is literally the situation that we've landed in right now. And it's really going to be in Man City's court. It'd be strange if they did go 75 plus 15 and just change the structure in. Because that would give Arsenal a chance to kind of go back with their third bid and be successful. If I was Man City, I'd probably, if I could, just get to the 100 and get out of there with the player.
Yeah. Just go in, get it done.
You'd think.
Move on. But this is the thing.
I'm not a businessman now.
No, you don't know. I agree. Again, I look at this. I understand the low ball thing that Arsenal did, but in the background was this Gundogan situation. This second bid should have been better. Again, hindsight's lucrative. So Arsenal fans that said we should have just paid the opening asking price straight away. Yeah, maybe you're right now. I understood the low balling in the beginning, but they've still got an opportunity here to get this done. The problem is City have made their, again, once. I don't know how to make this. Have you ever, like when you were young and you were at school, did you ever do those things? Maybe even when you're young adult working years, did you ever do those weird like games where people say, someone offers you 10 grand, would you punch that old lady across the road in the face? And everybody in the right circumstance says, no, of course I wouldn't. I'd love to see what happens if someone actually put 10,000, 100,000, £1 million in front of somebody and said, do it. When the money's real and you can actually, does that make sense? Your mindset changes, and it's a morbid example, but a friend of mine's a firefighter, and every parent on God's green earth would say, my daughter or son was caught in a burning building, I'd run in. My friend's a firefighter. He's done it for 20 years. And he said there's been occasions where parents are screaming for somebody to run into the house and save their family or their kids, but they don't have the courage because of those burning hot flames to do it. That's not an indication they're bad parents, but until you're in a situation, you don't know what the outcome is going to be. So as much as I'd prefer to stay in London, but when Man City make an official bid and they tell you their official plan for you, your head can be turned. So that's why I don't live in this world of everything. Like, everything's 100% a guarantee. There's been too many twists and turns and changes in football, in life, in history to say that for me, but that's just my thing.
Yeah, look, absolutely. Like the treble winners, they've got Pep Guardiola, they've got Erling Haaland, they've got like Jack Grealish in there. Like he's got at the moment Kyle Walker in there. Like there's a few players in the City setup, obviously, that he already knows well. Phil Foden. There are so many factors of this that will appeal to him. And it would be silly to think that Declan Rice wouldn't be interested in an opportunity like this. He has the opportunity to be part of the team that could dominate not just English football, but European football. I think the next Champions League final is at Wembley, isn't it, at the end of this season? Like that's definitely extra motivation for Pep Guardiola to go and do this.
They signed Rice. They've got Caicedo coming in. They're adding Guardiola. Haaland to give more experience. There is it's very unlikely because probability comes into this rather than chance. But they could defend their treble. That's not inconceivable. They could do a 4-peat and defend a treble. Be the first English team since, I think, Forest to retain a Champions League, but be the first to do it in the modern era of the Champions League.
Yeah.
And arguably do something as amazing as that and become the greatest football team in English football history. Maybe be looked at as the greatest football team ever in football. Just if Man City lack the ability to sell that to Declan Rice, get out of here. I'll go work for you. Trust me. Pay me 300 grand a year, and I'll sell that dream. I don't want to sell it for City because I'm a Man United fan, but it's an easy dream to sell, in my opinion. Smoky Settings here says the reason I think he'll improve Havertz is because he's improved Martinelli, Saka, Xhaka, Odegaard finishing in front of goal. I think that's a really fair point there, my friend. You're giving some case and points there.
Definitely.
United will have an embarrassing window, in my opinion. They could do.
They might do. I mean, they are at the moment. They are. the whole situation around it is embarrassing at the moment. From the De Gea situation to the takeover to the striker search to their bids for Mount, like every element of it is not going their way so far. And if they also see now Man City go and sign Declan Rice, it's another reason that it'd be like, okay, we thought we were catching up with them a little bit, but actually we're not. It's tough. Don't think that Man United don't feel that they can compete with Man City soon, because they'll always strive to do that. There's always that level of competition between the two, and they'll have to come back at some point, but they've got to match the signings, match the ability of the squad, and they're already way behind them from last season.
Yeah,
you can see in the FA Cup final, like where United were falling short, and if you take that cup final, and you think, okay, well next season they've got potentially Gvardiol and Declan Rice in that team, and Kovacic as one of the players too. Like, how do you even begin to compare it?
And it could be a slower for United. Maybe the takeover comes through too late, but football doesn't end at the end of this summer. If we have to wait until next summer for hopefully the Qataris to start improving this, you have to just swallow that and move on.
I think that's where the Mount and Hojlund things can look good. If they can kind of get through, if the takeover does go through too late, like, it is still important to get those sorts of signings through the door to make sure that the squad is still stronger than it was, and that they are still prepared for next year. I don't know, like maybe they can get Harry Kane on a free transfer. Maybe they can go and sign Frankie de Jong or somebody of that ilk as the big name midfielder. It's not impossible. Things turn so quick. We've just been talking about it with Arsenal. 2 years, they've changed everything about the identity and the vision of the club. Like, Man United could do that too.
I hope so. This year, I think Pep won't get Rice out of respect for Arteta. No chance. no chance on that.
I think it might be the other way around.
If we lose out on Rice, I will call for Edu's head on a stick. We never sign our number one targets. A lot of that in the comments today. Kingsley says, so what happens if Havertz flops at Arsenal then? That'll be big criticism.
Bayern Munich.
Yeah,
he'll go and join Bayern Munich. He'll be all right.
That'll be it. For me, he doesn't start in front of any player in the starting 11, but Jesus can play on the wings. Also, Arteta must use that to his advantage. Yeah. You risk upsetting Jesus with that, though. I think part of the promise was we're not going to play you out, but we're going to play you as a number 9. So, but equally, Arteta's got to be ruthless and do what's best for the team. This year says, Dean, you talk a lot. Talk about senior, 0 senior. What about James, Chilwell, Silva, Sterling? To label Chelsea going after young players is a madness, is baffling me.
Well, that is literally all of their senior players. Like, that's the extent of it. What I'm saying, I'm literally saying that you're going to have 3 players left, maybe 4, from the Champions League winning team from 2 years ago. And you're replacing all of them with players who have got 1 or 2 years experience of elite level football. And yeah, I mean, you've basically named the 4 of them there. And then you're hoping that everybody else can get up to that level. And Raheem Sterling had a difficult season last year. Reece James, like, there's absolutely no doubt that other teams are going to be keeping an eye on his situation. If Chelsea have a bad season, you're going to get another club knocking on the deal to try and sign him. This is Thiago Silva's last season probably in football. And Ben Chilwell was injured half of last season. So there's just not enough backing it up for me.
I hear you there, Dean. Dyke says, as an honest Arsenal fan, Edu in the best director ever. Obviously, Dyke is a Chelsea fan, long-standing member of the Terrace. Cal here, a Spurs fan, says, hope you're both good on the Vicario. Of course, I'll support him if he comes in, but nothing about it screams Ange wanting him over Raya. Same old, it seems. Yeah, I hear you there. I'm back in that. Gundogan to Barca. How did Barca pull this? And will this improve the midfield for Barca? Yeah, I mean, they pulled it off because they're Barcelona still. And they had a bad year 2 years ago. They're La Liga champions. So, yeah, they're still a highly, highly prestigious football club. There's no doubt about it in any way, shape, or form. So, yeah, that's how they're able to do that. Look, I want to thank you all for tuning in this morning. Dean, thanks for the updates. It's a bit of not a weird show, a good show. So much breaking news while we were live. Loads of super chats, which was great to interact with you, the viewers. More of that on the next Done Deal show. Next week, we'll have Ben back on the show. We've also got a big Chelsea journalist coming on next week as well, which we'll reveal. I think that's Monday. Ben will be back with us. Dean back with us next week as well to keep you up to date with what's going on in the transfer market. Please hit the like and share button. Remember, today we're live at 6 p.m. for the Top 6 show. Brilliant panel for you on that. And I'm sure in the next 6 hours, there's going to be some more news, opinions, and debate to bring your way. Hit the like and share button. Subscribe to the Football Terrace. Thank you again to the Dean Machine Jones, and we'll see you all again.